So the way that this works, dynamic data attachments, is that you have registration or your first form, okay? Your first form that kind of registers some data. And then you have some sort of follow-up form that uses the live data from this registration in your follow-up form. And that means when you make an update to your registration form, that new data will also be available in your follow-up form. So you're not having to download and attach a CSV to your second form. It's going to be automatically linked between those two forms. So the terminology or the words that we use is a parent project and a child project, okay? So just kind of remember those words. Your parent child is your first form where you're registering some data that you want to share with another form in a child project, okay? You can have more than one child project, and you also can have more than one parent project. So you can be collecting a couple different pieces of data in some sort of registration form and putting those both into a follow-up form, just so you know. So you could be registering households and you could be registering locations like clinics or something like that. I'm Jana, I'm from Humanitarian Data Solutions, and I'm so glad that you're here learning with me today. On my screen, what you can see is I've got my registration form. Now, if you want a download of all of the materials I'm using today, I'll leave a link in the description below, so you can go and grab this as well and work along. But this is just a very normal XLS form that we're going to load up into KoBoToolbox, and we're going to take a look at it. There's nothing different about this. You don't have to change anything about your normal registration form. All we're going to be registering in this form is an ID number, household's last name, head of household, last name, first name, gender, birth date, maybe take a picture, and some basic information about their household, okay? So we're gonna be registering head of household with the household. So let's go into KoBoToolbox and upload this. Okay, so I'm here in KoBoToolbox. I have my parent form uploaded. I'm now going to make one data submission. So this could be a test data submission, or it could be real. And you can do this either in Enketo on your browser, or you could be using a Collect app on your mobile device. So let's zoom here quickly through, and I'm going to make one data submission. Okay, so once all the data is submitted, we just want to click submit at the end of the form, and it's now going to, we'll just see it waiting up here, and it will refresh and upload this within 10 seconds. Okay, we can see it was successfully submitted. Now, let's go back into here. I'm just gonna refresh my view here. And I can actually see that my data tab up here has become available to click, and I can see my first data submission there. So now what you want to do is go into settings and go over here to connect projects. And all you want to click on now with your parent project is data sharing enabled, okay? So this will attach the full data set as a background XML file to this form. While not easily visible, it is technically possible for anyone entering data to your form to retrieve and view this data set. Don't use this feature if step 1 registration includes sensitive data, okay? So now I'm using fake data. So what I want you to think through is, do you have sensitive data? So if we have people's names, births, if we have health information about those people, just think through the data sensitivity before you share this. So this might be really good to share data that's not personally identifiable or not sensitive. If you do have some data that you want to hide, you can also select specific questions to share. So maybe you want to share location data because that's not really good. You always need to share that registration ID because that's the number we're going to link in between different forms. But I'm actually, because my data is fake, I'm going to share the whole thing. But just so you know, you do have an option to share only specific sets of data there. Okay. Once that is done, now we're done with the parent form, okay? So now, as a kind of, to go back over that important point, in this form, we collected an ID number. You need some sort of ID number, a unique identifier that connects the data from one form to the next, okay? So we've collected an ID number, and that's what we're gonna use in our second child form to pull in the data from the parent form. Okay, so the next thing we're gonna do is actually look at the follow-up form. So the the child form. Here I have it open in front of me. Let me zoom in a little bit so you can see it. And this form is almost exactly the same. It asks all of the same kind of basic information. Okay, so we want to clarify that nothing has changed since we last spoke to that person. So their address or their phone number, did they have a new baby, that kind of thing. And then what we're gonna do is ask some new questions, okay? So to make this as easy as possible, we probably wanna pull in all of the original data we hold on this person or this entity that we're filling in the follow-up form about. And we wanna pull that in from the last time we talked to them and update it if we need to. The way we're gonna do that is we're gonna enter the same ID number, and it's gonna go and find that ID number in the old parent form and pull in any linked data. Now, an easy way to do this is if you have barcodes. So if you have some sort of a barcode system where you give people a unique identifier and you give them a barcode or a QR code, you can scan that. I don't have that today, so I've also put kind of an enabled in my form that if I skip this question, I can just enter an ID number through text, okay? So what we're gonna do in order to upload this to KoBoToolbox as a child form, okay? We are going to enter up here XML-external, okay? And we're gonna give it a name, okay? So the XML external is like, go pull in another form, please. So that's what it's telling the form. And then we're going to give it a name. And what we want to pull in is the registration. Now we can name this anything we want. We could name it reg, we could name it, it doesn't matter, but I'm gonna call it registration. Okay, just because that reminds me that it's the registration form that I wanna pull in, okay? So let me just kind of highlight that, maybe in orange there. XML external registration. So I'm gonna do that very first. I'm gonna save this and upload it to KoBoToolbox. So that has deployed. Let's now go into our settings, okay? So this is step 2 follow-up. We're gonna go into our settings and go back to our Connect projects. Now, you don't need to enable data sharing. So you only need to enable data sharing when it's a parent form to another form, okay? However, what we do need is we need to select a different project to import data from. So I'm going to choose step 1, registration, and I'm going to name it registration. So this name here, registration, has to be the same name that you entered here. XML external registration. Okay, so enter exactly the same name here and then click import. Okay, now we're going to select all. We're going to import everything. Whoops, this has just refreshed. And we'll leave that in because that's not the first time it's happened to me. So that's probably something that normally happens. We're going to import. We're going to select all and click accept. Okay, so now we're importing registration, step 1 registration, into our child form. Fantastic. So now how do we access that data inside of our form? And now comes a little bit of the hard/exciting work. So the next thing you need to do is basically create calculations to pull in the data that you want to have in your new form, okay? So let's go back to here. So we've saved this, okay? Now, I'm going to save this as a new step so you can kind of see the next step. So the first thing that we do in the form is we get that ID number entered. Once the ID number is entered, we want to make a calculation question, calculate, that basically pulls in data from our last form. Now, before we go any further, I'm just going to essentially into this table here. Okay. So I'm also going to give you access in the resources section to this table, okay? And what you want to do is get really clear on what is the data that you want to link between your registration and your follow-up form. We obviously need the ID number, okay, an ID type. We want the first name, last name, date of birth, and sex or gender of the person who we have registered. And that's obviously this example. You want to make your own list for your own form. Then we want all of this other data. So number of people in the household, the location that this person lives at. We've got a GPS, the phone number, and phone provider, okay? So that's what I'm going to want to pull into my child form. So the next thing I'm going to do in here is figure out, okay, what is the name, the variable name of that piece of data in my first parent form. So if I bring open you can see actually that my governorate here, I want to look then in my name column and see reg, so that's reg for registration underscore governorate, okay? So you can see in here, I've got for my governorate, reg underscore governorate. What I've done for completeness is also put in my name, the same kind of the linked information, the name of that same variable. So in my follow-up form, the name is FUP for follow-up underscore district, okay, or governorate. So if we look in here, go to governorate, it's FUP underscore governorate. So you can see that the next thing you want to do is just get really clear on what exactly is the data you want to share and what's the variable name in your parent form and in your child form. Now, the next thing you want to know is the path, okay? So we know the variable name, but we're going to do this together. Let's look at ID type, okay, in your registration form. Okay, so where is our ID type? ID type is right here. Now, ID type might just be sitting out there as the first question in the form, and it might not be within a group, but it might also be inside of a group. Now, I'm going to kind of highlight everything. I'm going to take wrap text off so I can see everything kind of in a row or in a very clean column. If you see, there's actually highlights on begin group and end group. And if you want to do this, we could also just highlight the type, go to conditional formatting. We want to highlight anything that is begin group, okay? And also anything that is end group. So you need to be very clear on where your groups end and where they begin, okay? Because you need to know which group your data is in. So here's our reg ID type, okay? It's inside of this group here, reg HOHH details, okay? Now, there was another group up here, but they ended it before they started this group. So it's just in our main survey with reg HOHH details, and then it's reg ID type, okay? So I'm going to first copy the group name, and I'm going to put it actually in front of this, and then put a little slash there, and then reg ID type, okay? So we already know the name of the variable name, but now we want to find out what groups everything is in, okay? Now for ID number, it's the same. So I can actually just copy or paste it again here with the slash, okay? So now I know the group and the name. And this is basically the path that will help your new data, your child form, find the data in the parent form, okay? So we have to find a path to show it where the data is actually sitting. Okay, first name, last name, birth date, and gender are all sitting in the same location, so let's add that. And now we're into kind of number of people in the household, okay? So that is actually sitting in a different group. So that was a group, it has now ended, okay? So now we've got a new group that's reg HH details, and inside that group we have another group. So this is kind of a subgroup, reg HH contact, where we've got our address, our mobile number, and our mobile provider. So we're gonna come back to that in a minute. And then we end the contact group, so that's one group, and then we're back to the household composition group. So actually, this is where we're sitting. So this group is still sitting within this group of reg HH details, okay? So we've got reg HH details first, and then a slash, and then we go into the composition group. So we can paste that, and then slash, and then we've got reg count children within that one, okay? So now I know that that's the same location or the same path for all of these kind of count numbers. So I'm going to just copy this, and I'm going to put it in front of each of these. Count males and total household members here. So that was our household composition. Now we've got phone number, we've got address, and we've got phone provider. Was phone provider on here? I don't think so. So let's put phone provider on here as well. So that, I think that was Reg Mobile Provider was the name of that. And that's probably P Mobile Provider. So let's get the path for each of those ones. So that's here. So reg address is within reg HH details and then reg HH contact. So that reg HH details first. Okay, so that's the same kind of parent group here. Then it's within the reg HH contact subgroup and then the mobile number. Okay, so now that is the same location as is our address and as is our mobile provider. So then, is there anything else missing? Okay, governorate, district, sub-district, and neighborhood and GPS. So let's go find out where those sit, and then we know the path to everything. Here it is, right up at the top. So it's just in the group reg location details. So I'm going to grab that group name, and we're just going to paste it in here. Okay, so now you have all of the paths to all of the data inside of your registration form. So we know where to find that data to pull it into the follow-up. Now, we don't need to do this right now for the follow-up form because we don't need to know the paths of the follow-up form. Unless you were going to make a third follow-up form where you wanted to pull data from number 2, your step 2, into your next form, then you need to go and find the paths of all of these, okay? Within the follow-up form. But for now, all we need to do is the registration form, so we've got that. So let's go on to the next step. So the first thing that we're gonna do when we open up our new calculate question inside of our child form, okay? So we're gonna ask for that ID number, and then we're gonna calculate something else based on that ID number. So let's figure out the first name, okay? HOHH first name. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to call this by the same name. I'm going to call this reg first name, just to keep it consistent, but you don't have to call it exactly the same name, but I'm going to just so I know what I'm talking about. Then we want to go over to our column that says calculation, okay? And I'm going to go grab, and this is a bit of a cheat sheet that you're going to have here. So I'm going to grab this calculation here, okay? And here's what you're going to do. Okay, so the very first part of this data, and we can actually create this together. So I'll just show you what to do first. Okay, so the very first thing you want to write is instance, and then an open bracket. And then you want to grab the name of this XML external, okay? And put that in single quotes here. So instance, registration, close that. Then you want to do /root and then /data, okay? And that's going to take us into where the data is stored inside of that attached XML file, okay? That's coming from that other form. The next thing we need to do is say we want to find the data where the ID number matches, okay? Now, we didn't actually get the path to the ID number, did we? Oh no, maybe we did. Did we? We did, look. So this ID number right here is what we're gonna grab here, okay? We wanna grab that path. So here, we're gonna open up with a square bracket after we put that data, and we wanna paste that ID number coming in from the parent form, and then we wanna say equals, and you wanna do current, and then a slash, and then a dot, and a slash, okay? And then you want to do the name of the ID number that was entered in this child form, okay? And then you're gonna close that bracket, okay? So what we're gonna do here is we're looking at the instance of registration that we've brought in, go to where we are storing the data, find where the data matches between the ID numbers, okay? And then we want to tell it what data to get, okay? So then we were looking for the first name. So we're gonna grab this path here. And after here, we're gonna put a slash and then paste that path, okay? Now I've copied it in here twice, and that's where you're going to do every single time. Okay, so just to know that. So that is our first name. Okay, now let me highlight this kind of pink. Now for each one of these things, I'm going to do exactly the same. Okay, and I have already done this. So I'm going to actually just copy here. Copy. And I'm going to paste it in here. Oops, I've copied over some of my other data. I'm going to copy that one where I've already done it and paste it, okay? Because that would take quite a long time to do it. So I've just set that up. Now, you're gonna have access to this, so you know exactly what this looks like, but what you can see in the calculation column is that first part is always the same. So registration, take us to the route where the ID numbers match, and then all we do is put those path names at the end. Looks really complicated, and I apologize for that. And then the last thing that you want to do is just put in an XML or a note. Basically, I've called mine XML note, which I just say reg governorate equals, and then show reg governorate. Reg district equals, show this. Now, this is almost a note to myself to say, did I miss any data, or is everything there? Is everything looking the way it should? Okay, so that's going to be the next step of the process. Now, what I'm going to do now, I'm going to stop here. I'm going to re-upload this into KoBoToolbox, and we're going to give it a try, and then we'll take the next step. So I've re-uploaded that in KoBoToolbox. Let me open that up. And the first thing it's going to ask me for is the ID number. So actually what I'm going to do here, now look at this. It has actually gone in to my other form and pulled all of this information from where I entered it in my parent form. Very cool, okay? So now I have just a list of all of that data, and that's because of that one question I had here where I just wanted to give me a note back that lists all of the data, okay? So I've listed it all. Now, it hasn't pre-filled all of that data into all of my questions, so that's what we're gonna do in the next step, but I know now that it's actually working to pull all of that data into my form. So now that I know that the data is actually linked, that's working, now I can kind of go on to the next step. And that's just a tip, just take things one step at a time, for sure. So let's close that, and let's go back into our form. Now, what I'm gonna do is I'll save that so you can have kind of the multiple steps of the process when you download this, okay? So now I'm gonna save this next step as step 4, follow-up tutorial. So the next thing that we want to do is we want to go into each of the data points where we want to pull that data into, okay? So governorate, district, sub-district, and town, we're probably going to pull in. GPS, I don't think I'm actually going to pull in GPS because I want them to take a new GPS point. So we're going to go all the way over to our calculation column again. And technically all you need to do is then put in reg governorate, okay? And that will actually, because we're basically pulling in the data that's coming from up here. So reg governorate, so we're just referring to that and saying, bring that over here. However, if you do it like that, it won't let you write over and update it, okay? So it will update it to just whatever was pulled open in the parent. So what we want to do is we want to wrap this in something called once. So once, and then do a bracket, and we want to say if, actually the once is going to come a bit later, just a minute, sorry. If reg governorate equals blank, okay, so just 2 inverted commas there, comma, leave blank, okay? 2 inverted commas. Else, okay, so there's a third comma. We're going to do is once, fill it in with reg governorate. So once we have a number in there, it will fill it in with once governorate, or with reg governorate. If it's blank, it won't be doing anything. once it's not blank, it's gonna at one point just fill it in. And then even if we like update the ID number or something again, or if we update this, it's never gonna pull in that data again, okay? So it's not gonna overwrite your data. If you leave it without the once, it will overwrite that. That's just kind of a tip for that. Now, we're gonna do this for every single thing that we want. So for this, it's gonna be if reg district equals blank, then leave blank. But if it doesn't, then once fill it in with the district name. Okay, so now we just want to do that for all of the data points where we want to have this kind of coming in. So I'm going to grab this from over here because I've actually kind of already set this up. So I'm going to copy all of this. And I'm literally just highlighting these in red just so we can kind of see where those formulas were entered. So you can see the pink, the orange up here is what you have to add for the XML external. The pink here is pulling all that data in, and then the red is kind of that last step of the process where you then take that once formula and pull it in to all of the individual questions. Okay, so we're going to save that, and then we're going to re-upload back to KoBoToolbox. So we're going to upload Okay, it's redeployed that form, and now we're going to open it, and we're going to put in that same ID number and figure this out again. So this is the refreshed form. We're going to do a national identity card, put in our ID number. You can see all that data is in, and now as we scroll through, you can see that the data has actually now pre-filled with all of that same information. Okay, it hasn't filled in the GPS because we told it not to. And obviously the date of the follow-up is today, so that's not something we pulled in. Have we verified the ID? Yes. And then what I've done is, you can see what I've done in gray is in the form. I have made two questions, the last name and the birth date, as read-only. Now you don't have to do this. I've done this just to show you what you can do. But that you cannot update that. We basically said the last name and the birth date, they had to have been entered correctly. Those are two things that can't change. Other than that, we can go kind of update things. So maybe this is Thomas instead of Tom. Gender is there, address is there. If they have, now they're at 678 Long Road, then update the address. For the mobile phone number, maybe we got it wrong and it was an 8 instead of a 9. If they had a new baby, maybe they have an extra baby here. So, this needs to be updated. And then it's going to ask, whatever your follow-up questions are here, down here, and then we can submit that at the end. Okay, that's up here. I'll just click this and upload it. Now I'm going to go back into here. We'll refresh this and we'll go and take a look at that data. So what we did is we updated that address. So let's go take a look and make sure the address didn't get overwritten. So the address that they entered in the beginning was here. Okay, so we had 678 Long Road. So that was what we updated as the address, whereas originally it had 12345 Road Avenue was their kind of original. So we can kind of see how that actually allows us to update information as well. Now, it won't update the information back in the parent form. It does keep it all in this follow-up form, but it hasn't overwritten it. Now, if you want all of the downloads and the resources that I've kind of showed and used in this tutorial, I'll put the link down below so you can just go download it and figure out on your own. I do want to do one more thing with you though, and if you're still with me, I think this is quite important. Okay, so very quickly here towards the end, I just want to run over about 6 slides with you here, okay? So last saved, another way to kind of, instead of linking one form to another. So say you're using the same form, like a registration form, you're going from person to person or from location to location, and actually some data doesn't change, okay? So say the district is the same or the neighborhood is the same, etc., etc. You can use something called a last saved function. Now, I will link to a different video tutorial that I will be doing on this soon. I'll put that in the description below, but that is something that you can look into. The other thing you can look into is JR choice name, especially for multilingual forms. So instead of referring to directly like the variable name of something and showing it in your label, you want to show just the English or the French or the other local language version of that label inside of here. So we have the ID type label instead of the ID type. That's especially important when you're linking to data from a select one or a select multiple choice. So definitely look into that. Look into read only. So I did show you that in the tutorial, how you can use that. Barcode, so instead of manually entering ID cards and ID codes, use those and link those to barcodes. Two things to really think about and remember: if you're relying on human entry, you might want to think about double entry. So making people enter the same number twice in terms of an identity number, just to make sure that they're really getting that right. So if you don't have a barcode, maybe you want to do double entry. Also data sensitivity. So when you share that data, it will become kind of as an attachment that's not encrypted. So don't be sharing kind of personal data or health data or sensitive data in those attachments. It's not easy to get the data, but it is technically possible. There are 3 limitations that you kind of want to be aware of when you're working with this. First of all, you can't refer to data within repeat groups in the parent form, okay? So you can't kind of sum up or count data that was entered into repeat groups in your parent form. As a workaround, you can put in kind of some of those calculations in your parent form outside of the repeat. So sum it all up, or, pull in data in an indexed repeat or something as a formula within your parent form, and then you can refer to it in your child form. But you can't go and pull data out of repeat groups from your child form. You also can't create a choice list from items within your parent form. So you can't just say, I want to choose a center that I registered in my registration form, and it will just give you a list of 100, centers that were registered in your registration form. You have to have the ID number, enter it, and then it will go and pull that data, but it won't just give you a predefined list that shows you all of the data available from within the parent form. Okay, so that's a little bit of a limitation. Also, just to remind you that data will revert to the calculated values upon submission unless you use the once function to prevent those calculations from recalculating. So that is how you do dynamic data attachments. That was a very long and complex tutorial, so I hope you've been able to stick with me this far, but hopefully that has kind of walked you step by step through the process. Again, get the link to the resources in the description below. Hope this was really useful as a very complex tutorial, and hope that you can tell me and share with me how you're using this function, dynamic data attachments, in your work and in your workflow. Can't wait to hear about it. Okay, until next time, bye.